Hi, this is Rabbi Orlofsky, and welcome to the Rabbi Orlofsky Show, our special Pesach program. Got my matzah tie. We are all set, and we are getting ready for the seder. You've already cleaned your entire house. You've done all your shopping. You've done all your cooking. You're just sitting with your feet up, enjoying a Pesach, a cup of coffee. So you don't want to bring any chametz into the house. And nothing to do but sit and go through your Haggadahs and get ready. Vehi shamda, lavaiseinu velanu. Got to get into the mood, yeah? My father basically read through. He didn't do much commentary. I just remember whenever he would come to Vehi shamda, he would say, in every generation, there's somebody who wants to destroy us, a Hitler, a Haman, somebody who wants to destroy us. It's true. It's true. There's always somebody. There's a lot of people out there who don't like us. Yeah. So I welcome you to our special Pesach program, whether you're listening on Torah Anytime, or to wherever you listen to your podcasts or watch your podcasts. It's a thrill to be able to have you with us. And for this special Pesach program edition, we have a sponsor for this show. This is from the Tarlow family, who say in honor of their daughter Racheli, who turned us on to the Rabbi Orlofsky show. Good for you, Racheli. In the schus that she should continue to inspire others to become closer and closer to Hashem. What a beautiful thing. And a special thank you out there to all of the people who let other people know about the Rabbi Orlofsky show. Because it's an amazing thing. There's a yeshiva in Eretz Yisrael. I won't mention the name. I don't know if they want it publicized. I heard this from somebody in the yeshiva. That Ben Sdarim, all the Rebbeim crowd into the room where they have a computer because they need a computer to be able to look up, the 80,000 Svarim that they have on. And they put on for half an hour the Rabbi Orlofsky show. And the Hanhola Harv is on it. What exactly is the deep message Rabbi Orlofsky is giving across this week? And as somebody wrote me that the 8th grade class in South Shore in Long Island, they are avid fans. They asked me to give them a shout out. So South Shore Yeshiva, way to go. Yeah. So Baruch Hashem. So if you think that this is something worthwhile, share it with your friends. Tell people about it. Say, why aren't you participating and being part of the Rabbi Orlofsky movement? Okay. Anyway, we're talking about Pesach. Now, here's interesting little bit of history. I mentioned this. I actually just mentioned this. I was approached by the Hamadiyah in English, if I would write a column on chinuch. And I said, I don't know anything about chinuch. So they said, you have kids, you know about chinuch. So it was shortly before Pesach, and I wrote a series of articles. It was actually 5 articles on the Dalet Banim. If you go to RabbiOrlofsky.com, those articles are there. I guess you could just search for the 4 sons. And it'll be my articles because I only have 3 sons. You would have to go and look for my 3 sons, but then you would end up seeing little clips about Fred McMurray. That's a deep cut. Anyway, but we talk about this, so I'm going to sum it up a little bit. And it's an absolutely astounding section of the Haggadah. Keneged Arba Banim Dibra Torah, Echad Chacham, Echad Rasha, Echad Tam, Echad Jenadeh Lishol. Let's understand what that means. We learn out things in the Torah from an extra vav, from a mapik hey, that they put a little dot in the letter hey. We learn things out from there. We learn things out from Gezerah Shavas, from Hekesh, things that aren't spelled out. And yet the Torah felt it was necessary to give us 3 separate psukim that we have to darshan to come up with 4 sons, to teach us that there are 4 different types of children. The wise son, the wicked son, the simple son, and the son who doesn't know how to ask. Why? And the answer is because Seder night, there is a mitzvah to tell the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim. And so, if there's one place where the Torah is going to teach us educational methodology, it's going to be at the night of the Seder. Because, okay, I have a friend of mine who's a plumber. He has a much easier life than I do. Not as exciting, but easier. Why? Because he goes in to fix something. And if the person says afterwards, I don't think you're a good plumber. So you say, okay, bring in another plumber. You know, there's a toilet flushes, yeah, the tank fills up. I did my job. It's objective. But when you're a speaker, you can't afterwards say, I gave a great speech. It's your fault that you didn't appreciate it. Then you're not going to be rehired. It's your job to understand who you are speaking to and speak to them. I may have mentioned this, Rabbi Lemmel, who was many years in Halb and Hebrew Academy of Long Beach, and he had the schus, he was living next to us for many years, and he used to say to me, Darshanim need to read the pasuk differently. Einayim lahem v'lo yir'u aznayim. They have eyes, but they can't see the ears. You have to understand whether or not the people are relating to what you're saying to. And therefore, a speaker has to know, am I over everybody's head? Do I need to make it more? You have to gear your message to the people that you're speaking to. I prepared once a brilliant educational program in Parshas Vayechi, a Shabbaton, NCSY. I had one with Yisachar Zvulun and one with Shimon and Levi. I had two different ones, the brachas and what they were trying to say about. I had a few shurim like this contrast. I got there and I realized these people don't know anything. So I ditched it. I said, okay, tonight we're talking about anti-Semitism. Tomorrow we're going to talk about intermarriage. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about things that relate to the people. I was a magician. We mentioned this some podcasts ago. And I remember I had a book called The Amateur Magician's Handbook. Henry Hay, if I recall correctly. And in the introduction, he tells the story about a fellow who advertised himself as a magician, ventriloquist, entertainer. At the end of the show, the person who hired him said, I saw the first two, when do we see the third? Because it doesn't matter whether or not technically you did the right thing. People have to feel it. You have to relate to people. So Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, as the pasuk says, V'higadah levincha bayom hahu lemor. You have to tell it to your son in a way that he's going to be able to get the message. And this is an art form to be able to get the message. And sometimes you have to present it in different ways, and certainly to different audiences. So there are different types of kids. That's what the Torah is telling us. The Torah is giving us different psukim to tell you. Here's how you speak to each kid. Let's start with the Russia. Yeah, certainly the most fascinating is the Russia. Yeah? Ma havada zos lachem. Why are you doing this? Now, what should we do with him? Obviously, pull him close, be makarev him, tell him inspirational stories, get him back. That's not what we say. Hake es shinav. Now, hake es shinav is an interesting expression. My father used to say, wrap him in the mouth. That's not exactly what it means, but it certainly is what my father meant. But yeah, hake es shinav. And say, this is what Hashem did for me. If you were there, you wouldn't have been saved. Now, it seems to me, certainly on the surface, that that's a somewhat ineffective response. I say, I don't believe in all this. So I say, yeah? Well, if you were there, you wouldn't have been saved. I don't believe there was a there. Yeah? Well, it works out well. Yeah? It's like when a person says, you're going to burn in hell. I don't believe in hell. Then you're really going to burn in hell. I don't believe in it. So I say, I don't believe in all this stuff. So then I say, you're right. You're right. This is what Hashem did for me. If you were there, you wouldn't have been saved. What's the response? The response is really profound. There's a fifth son. Everyone says this. He's the one who doesn't come to the seder. But the Russia wants to be at the table. He wants to be counted as part of the Jewish people. He wants to be recognized as legitimate. And he wants to sit at the seder and he wants to machazik. He wants to make fun. So why is he coming? Because it's a cute cultural experience. You know, sit on the floor, play with a dreidel, eat potato latkes. It's great. You know, let's have a seder. Let's get crazy. Let's have, eat a little piece of matzah, have a little, gefilte fish, and, sing a couple of songs. And it's a cultural experience. But you're taking this seriously. I remember Reb Noach Weinberg once said, he says, in America, you could be a Jew or a Christian or a Muslim, as long as you don't take it seriously. Once you start to take it seriously, yeah, we've seen this now in Congress where a number of judges who are Catholic are being interviewed by the Congress, and the senators are asking questions like, you're a Catholic. What's your personal views on abortion? What's it? In other words, they don't want you to be able to be honest. They want you not to have a religion. If you have a religion, that's already negative. Unless you say, clearly, I don't believe in it. I'm a Christian, but I don't believe in it. I'm a Catholic, but I don't believe in it. But if you believe in it, that's already a problem. See? We're not supposed to be taking this too seriously. So, so what we're saying to him is something profound, and it's something that I have said whenever I have an opportunity, and I always look for these opportunities because I want to understand where people are coming from. I talk to Christians, I talk to Muslims, I talk to secular Jews, I talk to Reform, I talk to conservative, anybody who will talk to me to try to understand where they're coming from. And I've asked this question to Reform Jews. Why are you a Reform Jew? Because Orthodoxy is misogynist and it's racist and that. I said, okay, you've explained to me why I shouldn't be an Orthodox Jew. Why should I be a Reform Jew? Because the Orthodox... I said, okay, fine, you won. Okay? I'm done. I'm not Orthodox anymore. Why should I be a Reform Jew? You know how hard that is to answer? So we're part of a people, part of a mission. I said, you don't believe there's a God. Certainly not a personal God. The majority of Reform rabbis don't believe, from a poll, don't believe in a personal God. There's maybe a force in history, etc. None of them believe that the Torah is Misinai. It's definitely written by people. Yeah. I once heard a Reform rabbi on the radio, and he says, of course it wasn't written by God. God would never write this or write that. Because I'm personal friends with God, which is interesting because you don't even believe there is a God. It's certainly not a personal God, but you already know what he would write or what he wouldn't write. So then you say the uncomfortable question, then why be a Jew? For the morality? As Max I. Demont in his famous History of the Jews writes, with the destruction of the temple, we removed 1/3 of the laws of the Torah, those relating to offerings and to ritual purity. And with the Reform movement, we removed the 2/3, relating to all of the ritualistic laws, leaving us with nothing but the morality. Great, so I don't have to be a Jew. I just have to be a moralist. I just have to be a moral individual. There's no reason to be a Jew. And the fact that there's no answer to the question explains why so many Jews are disappearing. Why should I be a Jew? For what? For a book of fairy tales? It's a famous story. There was a conservative rabbi of a Sephardic shul. There aren't too many conservative Sephardic shuls in Los Angeles. And he got up, Seder night, shul, and he said, you should just know this is a fairy tale. It never happened. Never happened. Archaeology has proven that Yetzias Mitzrayim never took place. There was no Exodus. There was no this. There was no 10 plagues. The whole thing is make-believe. Thank you very much. Have a good Yontif. Yeah? And so families went home, and the Seder was all set up, and they said, put everything away. The rabbi said, this isn't true. This isn't true. So he tried to save it. Of course, we understand what it means to be slaves. It's the message that's the important thing. It's great. But let's say the message is the important thing. So I don't need the actual rituals. We'll just make believe. Why are you here? That's the question we're asking to the Russia. Hakeh shinav doesn't mean hakeh, like big, means take the bite out of him. Blunt his teeth. Take out the bite. What are you so upset for? I agree with you. This is nonsense. It's a book of fairy tales. What are you listening to the seder for? I don't know if I told this question or not, but I grew up in a conservative synagogue in Long Island, the East Meadow Jewish Center, and they had a newsletter, the East Meadow Observer. A little ironic, you think about it, should be the East Meadow Non-Observer. But I remember before Purim, the education chairman wrote an article about how the Purim story never took place, and really Esther is the goddess Astarte, and Mordechai was this Persian god. The whole thing is a Persian fairy tale. So my father shows it to me. So I looked at it and I said, okay. He copied the whole thing out of Grazel's, Solomon Grazel's History of the Jews. I mean, it's the same exact article. I said, I'm not going to argue the pros and cons. I have one question for him. How can he ask his kids to go to synagogue on Purim? Dad, I'm too old for the Easter Bunny. I'm too old for Santa Claus. Could you imagine telling an adult we should go to church today so that we can celebrate Santa Claus flying through the sky, going into people's chimneys and bringing gifts? You got to be out of your mind. Okay, it's a cute little story you want to tell the children, but you expect adults to come to synagogue to celebrate a Persian fairy tale? You expect people to sit down and have a seder and eat the matzah and go through the whole thing when it's not true? And there's no answer to this question. There's no answer to this question. That's the answer we give to Russia. I understand. So why are you here? Yeah. The wise son says, Maha edis v'achukim v'amishpatim asher tziva Hashem Elokeinu eschem. Do you hear that? What are these laws and statutes and testimonies? I think I get that right. Yeah, that the Lord our God commanded you. Whoa! We just beat up on the Rosh because he said Ma'avodah zos lachem, and now the Chacham says eschem. Very important. To the untrained ear, the Chacham can sound like a Russia. Yeah. Or if you ask questions, people get nervous. I was in a school where I was brought in to answer basic questions, and one of the girls said, you shouldn't answer questions, it takes away from your Emunah Pshuta. I said, Emunah Pshuta? What does that mean? You just believe, you don't ask any questions, you just believe. I said, then you will never have the faith of a Mormon. The Mormons have the greatest emunah in the world. If you stay in a Marriott, in some hotels they put like a New Testament in the little desk drawer, the Gideons. But in the Marriott they put in a book of the Mormons. So I read this. I read the introduction at least. I didn't read the whole book. And it's fascinating. Joseph Smith, who had been arrested a number of times for fraud, that, by the way, was not in the Book of the Mormons. I happened to research this. Claims that an angel led him to a mountain in upstate New York, where Yashka, after the crucifixion, he did not go straight up to heaven. He went to upstate New York, which is kind of strange, because according to them, he died around Easter, which is around Pesach time. Could be that he found the Pesach hotel. I'm not really sure. But you figure if it was in the summer, I understand why you go to upstate New York. But anyway, he went someplace to upstate New York, and he buried these golden plates, and then he went up to heaven. And the angel took Joseph Smith to upstate New York, where he dug up these golden plates. And in the Book of the Mormons, a number of family members testify that they were actually allowed to feel the golden plates under a cloth. They couldn't see them. And he transcribed those golden plates. That became the Book of the Mormons. And then the angel came and took it away, which is really too bad, because had he kept it, this would have been a really amazing find. And so then he went to spread his teaching. He was murdered by an angry mob. And so Brigham Young, his Talmud Muvak, his main student, took over, and he led them to the Pacific Ocean. And they finally arrived at the shores of the Pacific Ocean. They all gave thanks, but through poor planning, it was in fact the Great Salt Lake in Utah. And that's where they set themselves up. And what's great about the Church of Latter-day Saints is that the head of the church has an ongoing revelation. So, for example, they allowed polygamy. And eventually Utah wanted to become a state. And they said, you can't because you have polygamy. Now listen to this, because the timing is what makes this so miraculous. God came to Brigham Young and told him to outlaw polygamy. But like just at that moment, so they were able to become a state. Now, a cynic might think that he made it up, but a true believer says, wow, it's the timing that makes this so miraculous. Brigham Young University didn't allow in blacks. The basketball league was going to expel them. And the head of the Mormon church got a vision that they should now allow in blacks. And the timing is just what makes this so incredibly miraculous. Now, if you can believe that, being a Jew is nothing. It doesn't take any emunah. I had a teacher once. I had one of my kids in class who unfortunately listened to too many of my classes. And she said it was about Hanukkah. And she says, the difference between the Jews and the Greeks have to have everything proven to them. It has to be logical. It has to make sense. We just believe. So my daughter said, you mean we're naive? Just believe what anybody tells us? So it says, we said Na'aseh v'nishma. And my daughter said, after the Yesher Makos and Yetzias Mitzrayim and Kriyas Yamsuf and the Man, miracles and miracles, God proved that he exists and that he has a certain amount of credibility going into this. But it's not just somebody tapped on the shoulder and says, hi, God told me that he wants you to do the following. Yeah? He wouldn't do that. Wouldn't just do that. Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner used to do this routine called the 2,000-year-old man. So he says to him, he says, did you know Napoleon? He says, short guy. He says, yeah. Yeah, what was that? His hand in his shirt. He says, that's right, that's him. Yeah. He says, how did you know him? I had a bungalow in Elba. And I saw this guy, a short guy, used to sit there and he used to stare off into the distance. Says, they took France from me. They took my France. So I said, so? What are you sitting there for? You go back and take it back. Take back your France. Stand up for yourself. He says, so you're responsible for the Battle of Waterloo? He says, no, I wasn't. He says, some nut comes up to you on the beach and tells you capture France. Would you capture France? I wouldn't capture France. Somebody comes up to you and says, go capture France. You're going to capture France. You're like, it's my fault. Somebody comes over to you and taps you on the shoulder and says, listen, there's a God and he wants you to do all these laws. And you're like, okay. That's not, as Reb Noach Weinberg always says, we Jews have been accused of every heinous crime in history. The only thing no one has ever called us is stupid. We're not naive. So we say the Chacham is just smart enough to know. Ma avodah zos lochem. I can't pretend I was there. What do you want me to say? I was in Egypt and I remember being redeemed? I don't. But I'm asking you. And he says, Hashem Elokeinu, our God. If you're a little smarter, you'll look into it to be able to figure out what he's saying. The Tam is what we used to call a Poshet Yid. A Poshet Yid. They write that during the Spanish Inquisition, all the intellectuals and all the poets and all these people, they weren't able to stand up to the Zionist like a Poshet Yid. Poshet Yid knew what emes was. Yeah, he knew what he heard from his fathers, from his grandfathers. He knew what to keep and what to do. And that's the bulwark. So he's not an intellectual genius. Mazos. And it says, give him the answer. Yeah, Hashem took us out of Egypt. Give him the story. Make it interesting for him. I don't have to sit here and work through every Chaim. I don't have to go. He can have that appreciation, but that may not be him. There was this Amoritz in Vilna. He was dancing on Simchas Torah. And finally, the Vilna guy says to him, he says, what are you dancing? You don't know anything about the Torah. He says, I'm dancing that there's a Vilna guy who knows the Torah. Yeah? I can have that appreciation, and I can understand it on my level. And that's okay. It's okay. Today we want the best and the brightest. Rabbi Elazar Langzim told me, he says, this Rosh Yeshiva, this Yeshiva Ketana, says to me, we take only the best boys in our Yeshiva Ketana. So he says, well, that doesn't say much about you as an educator, does it? You only know how to educate the best boys? You know how to work with anybody? He says, and you'll forgive me, what is the best 8th grader? We're the best 8th graders. Yeah. So he said, Tom, what's wrong with that? So teach him on his level that he'll understand it according to himself. You know who comes last? The She'en Yodea Lishol, the one who doesn't ask. Why doesn't the Russia come last? They did a survey. Here was the question. Would you agree that the biggest challenges facing the Jewish people today is ignorance and apathy? The number one answer was, I don't know and I don't care. Yeah. That's the hardest thing to deal with is apathy. She'en Yodea Lishol. I don't have any questions. At Pesach loy, open him up. If you saw my Purim podcast with my son, so I told the story about my Rebbe Whale. He saw that he was with a bunch of apathetic Long Island kids in the 70s. He wasn't going to put up with it. And he would do things to shake us up, to get a reaction out of us. Ad Pesach loy, do whatever you have to do to get somebody thinking. When I was in NCSY, there was this fellow, Moshe Zucker. He used to do these programs in Jewish clubs and public schools. And, he would find a question that was dramatic. You're a doctor, and there's a Nazi on the table who killed your parents. So you have an obligation as a doctor to save his life, but this person killed your parents. What would you do? To shake you up. Put people in an uncomfortable position where they have to... My brother at his 25th wedding anniversary, it says in Eshes Chayil, more precious than pearls. It says, you know how you make a pearl? It's a little piece of sand gets inside of the oyster and it irritates it. And from that irritation, it releases this material that eventually turns into a pearl. I spoke afterwards. I said, basically, he feels like his wife's been irritating him for 25 years. I wasn't invited back. But anyway, just kidding. But the point is that you have to get people to ask. But that's the worst. Give me a Russia. In order to be a Russia, you have to be a Chacham. We throw around the term Russia today. Don't mistake an idiot for a Russia. A person who just says stupid things is not a Russia, even though the things that he's saying are terrible things. To be a Russia, you got to be a Chacham. That's why the Chacham and the Russia are up there together. And if you can turn them around, you have a Chacham. She'en Yodea Lishol doesn't care. And that's the worst. That's the worst you can have is apathy. As we walk into our seder, we need to ask the question, how do I challenge everybody at that seder to feel that this is relevant, that this is something that touches their lives, that this is something meaningful to them? That is our challenge. It's got to be alive. That's it for this episode in our special Pesach program. And if you want to find out more about this podcast, go to rabbiorlofsky.com/podcast. If you want to find out or make a comment on this particular episode, go to rabbiorlofsky.com/podcast/30. This makes 15 hours of very close to Torah content. If you want to find out about upcoming events, go to rabbiorlofsky.com/events. If you want to contact me, it's rabbiorlofsky.com/contact. And if you would like to sponsor an episode, go to rabbiorlofsky.com/podcast and click on the sponsor an episode button. I am David Orlofsky. This is the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.